Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Rebekah Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan Elrom.
In our top story, Jerusalem and Beirut have made an historic agreement that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says is a huge blow to Iran and Hezbollah. Netanyahu explained that the agreement requires both countries to recognize each other's sovereignty, as well as Jerusalem's right to maintain the security zone inside of Lebanon for as long as required for Israel's security.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also announced that there is no room for a Palestinian state between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. The October 7th Hamas attacks on Israel and the ensuing wars have turned the Israeli public against the idea of a two-state solution. Recent polls reflect that nearly 80% of Israelis oppose a Palestinian state within the borders of Israel, and the Knesset is acting to ensure this never happens. In July of last year, the Israeli government passed a non-binding resolution to apply Israeli sovereignty throughout Judea, Samaria, and the Jordan Valley. The move is intended to prevent the possibility of the creation of a future Arab terror state in the heart of Israel.
The Iranian-backed Hamas terror group in Gaza is rebuilding its army and is preparing for another war with the Jewish state. Israel's Khan News reported that Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir was briefed that Hamas is rebuilding and preparing for another major operation. Hamas is reportedly manufacturing hundreds of bombs and anti-tank missiles each month. It is forcefully recruiting and training new fighters and is working to rebuild its network of terror tunnels. This is in direct violation of President Trump's peace plan for Gaza, which demands that the terror group disarm. The report claims that top IDF brass lobbied to restart the Israeli offensive against Hamas, but that Washington is pressuring Jerusalem to preserve the status quo while Board of Peace negotiations progress.
The United States is considering moving Middle East bases damaged in the war with Iran to Israel. The Wall Street Journal reported that a key naval base in Bahrain sustained $400 million in damage from Iranian missile and drone attacks. The Naval Support Activity Bahrain facility is the regional home to the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet headquarters. The suggestion has been made to relocate the base rather than rebuild it. Top American officials said the U.S. military is considering shrinking its footprint in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, and they may move these strategic bases to Israel.
Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has confirmed that Jerusalem is developing an advanced space laser program to launch attacks from above Earth. Katz pledged that Israel would become the leading global player in space attack capabilities. He said, if we achieve this, it will ensure the advantage of deterrence by giving us the ability to attack and destroy our enemies with larger resources.
Israel's Mossad security agency is advancing a plan to facilitate voluntarily emigration from Gaza. Science and Technology Minister Ghila Gamliel submitted the emigration plan to the Security Cabinet. She recently confirmed that the Defense Ministry and the Mossad have entered the picture to manage the effort. Gamliel told Israel's Arutz Sheva that internal surveys conducted among the residents of Gaza indicate a widespread interest in leaving the war-torn enclave.
The Israel Defense Forces has invested 21 million shekels in compact radar systems to detect incoming explosive drones in the field. Rehovot-based Magos Systems has agreed to supply the Israeli army with hundreds of its drone-detecting radar systems that provide a 60-second warning for soldiers to take cover from incoming UAVs. It can also detect fiber optic drones, which have been particularly lethal to IDF troops in Lebanon. 8 Magos radar systems have already entered IDF service, and following exceptional operational performance, the IDF ordered hundreds of additional units.
Senior IDF officers gathered for a strategic assessment briefing and to mark 1,000 days of fighting since the genocidal Hamas attack on Israel on October 7, 2023. IDF Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir began the meeting with a moment of silence for 1,200 men, women, and children murdered in what he called an attack on the very existence of the Jewish people. Zamir said the multi-arena situational assessment, marking 1,000 days of combat, was held as Israel faces significant crossroads in the war.
The Iran-backed Hamas terror group brutally cracked down on peaceful demonstrations in Gaza last week. Before the planned demonstrations, Hamas authorities rounded up and arrested individuals accused of planning the June 26th peaceful revolution. The Association of Palestinian Scholars announced that anyone participating in anti-Hamas demonstrations will be labeled a collaborator with Israel, a crime punishable by death. The Al-Jama'iner quoted a resident of Gaza saying Hamas is kidnapping and threatening people and has declared fatwas on anyone who opposes its fanatic rule.
Iranian cyber attacks on the Jewish state have dramatically surged. Yossi Karati, Director General of the National Cyber Directorate, said that during Operation Rising Lion, Iran launched 1,600 hostile cyber attacks on Israel. Last month alone, Iranian cyber attacks directed at Israel's critical infrastructure, central organizations and companies, and the public jumped to more than 4,800 attempts. Karati stressed that both the Iranian military and the Revolutionary Guard Corps have advanced cyber warfare divisions that must be taken seriously. He added that unlike in the kinetic realm, there is no ceasefire in cyberspace.
Argentinian President Javier Milei addressed Latin American lawmakers during their three-day summit in Buenos Aires, focused on strengthening ties with the Jewish state. The Israel Allies Foundation, in partnership with the American Friends of the Isaac Accords, held this important event amid a historic shift that is reshaping Latin America's alliance with the United States and Israel. Other notable speakers included Argentina's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Pablo Quinero, Argentina's ambassador to Israel, Axel Wanisch, and Brazilian presidential candidate Flavio Bolsonaro. Josh Reinstein, president of the Israel Allies Foundation, said, "This conference marks a defining moment as we call on courageous parliamentarians across the region to fully embrace the Isaac Accords and take the historic step of moving their nation's embassies to Jerusalem." He added that through faith-based diplomacy, the Israel Allies Foundation is forging an unbreakable alliance between Israel and Latin America.
The Israeli government has unanimously approved a proposal recognizing the Armenian genocide. Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar told the Israeli cabinet that recognizing the Armenian genocide is a moral duty as Jews and as members of the State of Israel. The move angered the Hamas-supporting country of Turkey, which still denies the systematic slaughter of 1.5 million Armenians in 1915 at the hands of the Ottoman Empire.
Brazilian presidential candidate Flavio Bolsonaro says that he hopes to celebrate his election victory in Jerusalem. In his keynote address at the Israel Allies Foundation's Latin American Conference, Bolsonaro vowed to reverse the course of his country's path. He said current President Luiz Inácio da Silva is an anti-Semite who does not represent the Brazilian people. Bolsonaro pledged that if elected, he will reverse Brazil's anti-Israel position, move his country's embassy to Jerusalem, and join the Isaac Accords, ushering in an era of prosperity and cooperation for both nations.
Researchers in Israel have announced their participation in a multi-million-dollar project to analyze the Dead Sea Scrolls using artificial intelligence, chemical analysis, and other advanced technologies. The Israel Antiquities Authority announced that it had joined a 5-year European-funded program called Tracing Scribes and Scrolls. The project seeks to learn more about the scribal culture and the transmission of knowledge in ancient Judea. Researchers say they are now able to address questions that were previously beyond their reach by combining laboratory analysis with the study of ancient handwriting and advances in artificial intelligence. An official with the IAA said research from this project will create an unprecedented database on the chemical composition of the ancient Dead Sea Scrolls.
Israel's foreign ministry held situational assessments to send aid to Venezuela following a series of devastating earthquakes in the country. Israel's Ministry of Health also confirmed that it would send a medical delegation and would dispatch logistics and emergency response teams. Israel Aid sent emergency response specialists and humanitarian experts that will focus on psychological first aid, water, sanitation, and rapid response. KKL JNF confirmed that at least 500 Jewish families were evacuated from their homes and announced that it is prepared to provide hundreds of thousands of dollars in aid to Venezuela's Jewish community.
That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. We're here in our beautiful studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Jacki Alexander. She's the CEO of Honest Reporting. Jacki, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Tell our viewers a little about what is Honest Reporting.
So Honest Reporting was founded during the Second Intifada to be a pro-Israel media watchdog. It had the idea that journalists were just running a little too quickly and needed help getting the story correctly, and that we needed the power of the people in order to help correct them. In the last 25 years, that mission has changed because, number one, people aren't getting their information from the media anymore. You know, in 2000, 2001, 60% of Americans were getting their information from the nightly news, and that's just no longer the case. It's social media, and increasingly, they're asking for the news from ChatGPT or other LLMs. So Honest Reporting has evolved to become an information watchdog, making sure that we are inserting factual information wherever you're looking for it.
Media bias against Israel has become ridiculous. I mean, it's not even close to what's really happening. The fake news it's not even fake news. It's just like preposterous. Are they just getting it wrong, or are they purposely spreading lies about Israel?
They're purposely spreading lies. Truth is subjective. Truth doesn't exist anymore. Journalism has become the avenue for activists to do social justice work. And we're seeing that more and more. And this isn't just me from the outside saying this. This is in conversation with the presidents of major newsrooms in the West. And they are increasingly saying that the tail is wagging the dog. You have journalists that are junior, that are looking to push a specific narrative. And if their editors won't go along with them, they're willing to do whatever they need to in order to say, well, if you won't let me publish this, then you must be a racist, or you must be an Islamophobe, or you must be X, Y, and Z. And therefore, I'm going to let the world know that. And social media allows them to do it. We're also seeing, by the way, good journalists, people who want to get the story right, being overridden by the editors in the States. So really, this is not a mistaken venture. This is true activism through journalism.
Why is there no recourse? How are they allowed to get away with it? If you're just printing lies all the time, then shouldn't there be some sort of penalty?
The United States of America is the greatest country in the world, and part of that is because we have freedom of the press. And there is a Supreme Court ruling that allows for journalists to have a lot of protection in terms of what they publish. And with all of those protections, the newspapers really have wide recourse to do what they want.
A lot of the newspapers today and the media engines are reporting Hamas, a recognized terrorist organization, what they're saying as facts. Isn't that supporting terror?
I think it should be seen as material support for terror, but they get clever about it, right? Sometimes they report Hamas, but sometimes what they do is they report what Hamas told the UN OSHA, and then what the UN OSHA put out in a press release, right? So they're not actually quoting Hamas, or they are, but indirectly, right? They're quoting the UN, they're quoting Amnesty International, they're quoting the entire Halo nonprofit industrial complex that is supporting and, quite honestly, infiltrated by Hamas.
You've had a lot of success as an organization of calling them out and getting them to retract information that were just lies. So how are you able to do that?
Social media has been the great equalizer. It's also been horrible in a lot of ways. But in terms of giving people power and using the power of pressure to get retractions, and more importantly, in my view, to get those people who should never have been trusted to write the news out of a job, social media has been really key for that. People love to sin in the darkness. They do not love to sin when there is a flashlight being shown on them.
We're seeing a lot of terrorists, actual terrorists, being hired by media entities. Is there recourse at least for that?
You know, so one of the things that we're working on right now is going through the list that the Committee to Protect Journalists has put out of all of the journalists, and I'm using that word very loosely, that have been killed in the Israel-Hamas war. And in going through that list, dozens and dozens and dozens were not just working for a Hamas-affiliated news organization, but they were active combatants. They were snipers. They were battalion commanders. These were legitimate terrorists in the fighting units. Go back to World War II, right? Joseph Goebbels was just as much of a Nazi and a purveyor of the Nazi cause as Erwin Rommel, right? It didn't matter if you were propaganda or you were military, you were a Nazi. And what we've seen over the last 20 years is that Hamas has a very sophisticated propaganda wing. They train people. If you are not going to be a good military commander, you might be a good photographer or a good journalist. And that's what we're seeing.
Honest reporting has been at the forefront of combating all these lies in the media for many, many years now. What is the future of honest reporting?
We have leaned in heavily to technology over the last 4 years. It started just by way of necessity. There was no way to work on October 8th the way we had been working on October 6th. On October 6th, we were going to newspapers, NewYorkTimes.com, BBC.co, and looking up by keyword articles. The deluge that happened of news articles after October 7th made that impossible. So we started working and building an algorithm that would monitor the media for us. And we taught it how to recognize media bias. That has become an incredible source of information, allowing us now to spot trends before they might be noticeable to the naked eye. We used it to spot that Joe Kent, when he resigned and went on to Tucker Carlson's show, that his narrative was being boosted and amplified by Russian and Iranian bot activity, and we were able to prove that. We're now working with other startup companies and VC-backed companies out of Tel Aviv to help us use technology in really special ways to be able to fight on the battlefield that has been brought to us.
Jacki, there are literally tens of millions of people watching the show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
You are on the right side of history. The facts back you up. Keep doing what you're doing. We need more people making our case, and thank you for doing that.
Jacki, thank you for being on the show, and thank you for tuning into Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
And now the truth from Zion.
A change of government in Iran would produce the most significant positive transformation of the Middle East in the modern era. The most immediate and measurable consequence would be the collapse of Iran's global proxy terrorist network, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen, and affiliated radical militias across Iraq and Syria all depend on Tehran for funding, weapons, training, and strategic direction from the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The rockets fired at Israeli cities, the drones launched at commercial shipping in the Red Sea, the bombs that have killed American soldiers across the region. All of it requires a state apparatus in Tehran to sustain it. A government accountable to the Iranian people would dismantle that apparatus, because continuing to fund foreign militias while Iranian citizens live in poverty is a political liability no democratic government could survive. The nuclear threat would cease to exist with the end of the regime that created it. Iran's nuclear program was not built to serve any recognizable national interest of the Iranian people. It was built to guarantee the survival of a fanatic clerical order that has no democratic mandate. A democratic Iranian government seeking integration into the international economy and membership in global institutions would have every reason to sign the Non-Proliferation Treaty in full, submit to comprehensive inspections, and verifiably dismantle its enrichment infrastructure. The specter of a nuclear-armed Iran, the threat that has shaped Middle Eastern security planning for decades, would be removed. The economic transformation would be substantial. Iran holds the world's second-largest natural gas reserves and the fourth-largest oil reserves. Its population of 88 million includes one of the most educated workforces in the region. Decades of clerical mismanagement, sanctions, and deliberate isolation have suppressed that potential almost entirely. A stable, legitimate Iranian government would attract significant foreign investment. The millions of educated professionals who fled under the Islamic Republic would have reason to return to their homeland. Regional trade routes, currently disrupted by Iranian aggression, would become commercially viable, and the Persian Gulf would become a corridor of exchange rather than a zone of intimidation. Regional governments that have spent decades dealing with Iranian subversion would be free to redirect resources toward development and cooperation. The Abraham Accords began restructuring Middle Eastern alliances in 2020, creating a framework for Arab-Israeli normalization that offers genuine stability. That process stalled partly because the unresolved threat from Tehran made full participation politically dangerous for Arab governments who had to calculate the cost of Iranian retaliation. A non-hostile Iran would remove that constraint and accelerate the most promising diplomatic architecture the region has produced in a generation. For the Iranian people themselves, the change would be immediate and transformative. Iran currently ranks among the world's most repressive countries by every measure of political freedom, press freedom, and women's rights. The government executes more people per capita than any nation on earth. It imprisons journalists for reporting, teachers for organizing, and labor leaders for striking. It runs a morality police empowered to detain and abuse women for the way they dress. It hangs teenagers who had the audacity to march in the streets. The end of that system would restore to 88 million people the freedoms they have never experienced under the radical Islamic Republic.
The suppression of the Iranian people by the Iranian regime has been devastating. The people of Iran are prisoners in their own country.
For Israel, the security transformation would be historic. The rockets fired from Lebanon traced back to Tehran, the precision missiles stored in Syria, the tunnel networks in Gaza, the incitement campaigns in Judea and Samaria, all of it traces back to Tehran. Israel has always maintained that its adversary is the regime, not the Iranian people. A free Iran with a government answerable to its people and oriented toward peaceful relations with its neighbors would remove the primary source of existential military pressure on the Jewish state. The question is not whether these benefits are real. They are real. The question is whether the governments with the power to support Iran's democratic transition will find the courage to act before it's too late. From Jerusalem, this is The Truth from Zion. Up next, shining light from Israel.
Located in the city of Jerusalem, in the heart of the old city, is Zedekiah's cave. Before we visit the cave itself, let's just go 150 feet to the west, where we have Damascus Gate, one of the 8 gates that lead into the old city of Jerusalem, and really by far the most beautiful. There's some antiquity here as well that dates back prior to the Turkish Empire, who built the old city walls about 500 years ago. And that antiquity dates back to Hadrian, the emperor of Rome, who destroys Jerusalem during the Bar Kokhba revolt. However, during that time, there weren't walls all around the old city. When the Turks come here, roughly about 1,200 years later, they are going to elong the center part of the Gate of Hadrian and, of course, build the walls of the old city. But let's head now to Zedekiah's cave and discover what lies below the old city. Zedekiah's cave is a man-made cave that's dug out under the old city. It was originally a quarry. The cave itself was rediscovered in the late 19th century after it had been closed off by the Turkish Empire, who were fearful that invaders would enter the cave, go under the old city, then up into the city in order to defeat it. Let's walk a little bit deeper into the cave and talk a little bit about its history. Charles Warren, one of the modern explorers here, named this cave Solomon's Quarry, believing that this was the quarry that Solomon chiseled out rock in order to build the first temple. The limestone of Jerusalem has various levels of quality. The highest quality is known as queenstone. This is a limestone that when you chisel out is relatively soft. However, when it's exposed to the elements, it becomes harder and harder and harder as time goes by. There was a vein of this queenstone that slanted down. That's why we're going down into the cave and then opened up at the end. This was one of the main quarries that King Herod used to build the second temple and the Western Wall that so many of us visit while in Jerusalem. When scientists tested the quality of the stones of the Western Wall, they matched up almost identical to the stones that are found here in this quarry. In fact, when you look at the ceiling, you can still see the chisel marks from the masons who quarried out these stones to build the Temple Mount during Herod's time. Let's go down a little bit deeper and visit one of the halls that's named after the Freemasons and learn about their connection with this cave. So the hall we're in right now, known as the Freemasons Hall, named also by Charles Warren, who named the entire system Solomon's Quarry, because Charles Warren himself was a Freemason. But we haven't delved into the name Zedekiah. Who was he and why is this cave known after him? Let's go find out a little bit deeper into the cave. Zedekiah was the last king of Judah before it fell to the Babylonians. And it says in the Tanakh, in the Bible, that he escaped out of the city to the Judean desert. Many people believe that it was through here that Zedekiah and his entourage fled. However, some Babylonian soldiers who were chasing a wild gazelle saw Zedekiah and his entourage leave the cave system near the city of Jericho, captured him, killed his sons right in front of his own eyes, and then gouged out his eyes so that the last thing he ever saw was his sons being murdered in front of him. Legend tells us that the spring behind me is caused by the tears that were shed by Zedekiah over the death of his sons and the loss of his kingdom. Thank you for watching today as we discovered the cavern under the Old City known as Zedekiah's Cave. Next time you visit Jerusalem, make sure to exit Damascus Gate and visit the Cave of Zedekiah.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Rebekah Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan Elrom, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.